all of us have heard very much about the peace process underway in Sri Lanka today. We know a lot about the war in Sri Lanka, but we do not know enough about the economy and how the major financial institutions are doing and how they will respond to some of the challenges in rebuilding the economy going forward. We're very pleased to be able to speak today with Mr. Rajendra Theagarajah, the CEO of Hatton National Bank, the second largest bank in Sri Lanka, and a bank that has responded very well to some of the current opportunities and is looking forward to being part of the process of rebuilding the economy. Thank you very much for speaking to us today. In the last 2 years, how would you describe the Sri Lankan economy, and how would you describe what Hatton needed to do to respond to to the economy as it was?
Leading up to the end of 2008, early 9, I think the country went through one of its worst crises with a balance of payments for the first time, showing almost a negative turnout. The reserves went down to almost 1 month of imports, mainly stimulated by a massive spending on defense as we came towards the highlight of the civil conflict. And in that process, that was against the backdrop of a global crisis as well, where liquidity was in very much an issue. Cash was king, and there was flight to quality. And in that perspective, I think Sri Lanka and the banking system was reasonably well blessed with the regulatory oversight, which minimized any exposure of the system to toxic assets outside the country. So I think that was a positive side.
So you were ring-fenced in that.
Ring-fenced to a great extent.
That's interesting. Yeah.
The second aspect was most players, including ourselves, have consistently believed in sustainable returns rather than one-off ad hoc returns. So our focus has always been on core banking and core business. Yes. However, the attraction has been to the periphery, purely because of our loyalty to a very large depositor-driven customer base.
Right.
So that, I think, itself helped us to focus on core banking rather than getting into other areas. And another very important thing from a global perspective on housing loans and the asset bubble was that in Sri Lanka, similar to South Asia, had very modest loan-to-value ratios, which itself, I think, gave that cushion which other markets did not have. And secondly, most banks, including our own bank, was exposed very minimally to the money market and the wholesale market for funding. It was driven by traditional retail deposits.
So the intermediation business itself as a percentage of the economy was small?
I would say very small. It was mainly driven by the banking sector, which had a predominant role on the financial sector assets,
right,
which itself gave a different set of responsibilities for the sector,
right,
in an area of peace to stimulate growth as well.
Right. What should have been happening in terms of the consolidation process, do you think, and do you think that that will happen today going forward?
I would say pre 2009 the necessity was not really there, because the well-managed banks were able to manage their the thirst for capital by plowing back significantly monies back into the business. So retention was there to support. Domestic interest rates also prohibited tier 2 raising, and the country's civil war prevented equity raising outside. So people were very much managing within. But now that this war is over and the single most threat which faced the country for 3 decades is over, I think capital will become an issue. And it will become an issue from the simple reason that the policymakers and the government is dreaming of doubling per capita over the next 5 years. And to double per capita income over 5 years, we are expecting the banking system to stimulate loan growth at the rate of about 20% per annum over the next 5 years. And what you have seen, Emmanuel, is in the last year or two, because of the flight to quality and flight to safety, the traditional loan growth slowing down to a trickle and money going into G6. So the tremendous challenge is A, changing the mindset from G6 into private sector lending, and to see how the sector has the capacity to handle that. And secondly, also from a risk weightage, moving from a near zero or zero rated asset portfolio into the 50, 75, 100 rated cash flow based business, which again is going to stress car, tier 1, 2 and loan issues.
Right. Something else has to happen even as you make that shift. That is privatization and the government's willingness to allow privatization to run its course.
If we look at the banking sector itself, literally 50% of the sector is dominated by the two state banks, which are not privatized. It's a single shareholder and not listed. But then the rest of the segment is driven by two clusters. The first cluster is the private sector banks, which are mainly listed like my own bank, which accounts for about another 30%, and the balance 20% with the smaller players and the branches of foreign banks. Now this 30-35% of the private sector is extremely vibrant. The stage is already set for any other major player who wants to come in and join into that sector. The framework has already been set. It is already the mindset.
Mr. Theagarajah, do you have a mental picture of your institution as an institution that looks like something equivalent in India or in China or in Southeast Asia? Which institutions do you look up to as best practice institutions that your bank would like to or is already emulating?
We in India, we very much admire the HDFC Bank, which is led by Aditya Puri, and we like to think that we are a smaller version from all aspects: management, leadership style, focusing on core values, attention to detail and KPIs, incentivizing staff. You know, the model. And both being very much national players rather than niche players, with a thirst to be aggressively going out and growing, not just by organic means, but also M&A, but taking a measured step rather than being adventurous.
So if a foreign fund manager were to stock pick, and if we looked at Sri Lanka, this is one of the institutions.
I would say it is one of the 2 or 3 most long-end funds would pick, and our institutional relationship framework also consciously shies away from hedge funds. We look at those who have a medium to long-term appetite, who are willing to look at the story.
Give us a sense of your role in the recovery of the Sri Lankan peace process. What do you see as the roadmap looking like, and what is your bank planning to do?
There will be a massive investment in infrastructure and development of the north and east of this country, where we are roughly 20 to 25% of land mass, which was hitherto before not made available for productive use, now being given. So I think the opportunity for people like us is tremendous, especially to support fisheries, agriculture, services in terms of leisure, knowledge-based industries, and very importantly, to give leadership to support in the SME